Someone you love is going to die, you already know this. And the moment it happens, something strange will take over your body, something older than language, older than cities, older than agriculture. You will feel the pull to do something, to gather, to mark the moment, to not just let them disappear. That pull is not grief. It is older than grief. It is one of the most defining things about being human, and today almost nobody talks about where it actually came from. Here is what most people assume. Ancient humans were too busy surviving to care much about death. They saw it constantly. They were probably numb to it. When someone died, they moved on. That assumption is almost completely wrong, and the evidence that dismantles it has been sitting in the ground for hundreds of thousands of years, waiting for us to pay attention. You are not the product of people who ignored their dead. You are the product of people who were obsessed with them. The oldest confirmed burial on record dates to roughly 300,000 years ago. Not from Homo sapiens. From a species called Homo naledi, a creature with a brain roughly a third the size of yours. Discovered in a cave system in South Africa called the Rising Star Cave, these individuals were carried deep underground and placed deliberately in the earth. Paleoanthropologist Lee Berger, who led the excavation, described the site as a mortuary practice. Not an accident, not predator activity. A choice. A small-brained hominin, long before modern humans walked the earth, was making decisions about what to do with its dead. Let that land for a moment. What does it mean that something with a much smaller brain than yours still felt the need to do something with the people it lost? Move forward in time. Around 100,000 years ago, in a cave called Kafze in Israel, archaeologists found the skeleton of a child buried with the antlers of a fallow deer placed across its arms. Researcher Irela Hovers, who studied the site extensively, noted this was not random. Objects were selected and deliberately placed. Someone stood over that child and made a decision. Someone thought, this matters. This moment deserves more than nothing. You have stood at a graveside. You know exactly what that person was feeling. But why? Why would early humans expend energy, real, costly energy in a world where calories were survival, on someone who could no longer benefit from that energy? This is the evolutionary question that researchers have wrestled with for decades. And the answer, when you find it, reveals something profound about what made humans different from every other creature on the planet. Anthropologist Paul Pettit, who wrote one of the most comprehensive studies of Paleolithic mortuary behavior, argues that death ritual emerged directly from the same cognitive leap that produced art, language, and symbolic thinking. When your ancestors began to understand that death was not just a physical event, that it had meaning, that a person who existed last week no longer existed this week, something unprecedented happened in the human mind. They began to construct what Pettit calls a mortuary landscape, a mental map of where the dead were, who they were, and what they meant to the living. Your brain does this. Right now, you have people you have lost, and you know exactly where they are in your memory. That is not a modern invention. That is ancient architecture. Now here is where it gets stranger, because burial was only part of what ancient humans did with their dead. In some cultures, they did not bury them at all. They kept them. Archaeological sites across Europe and the Near East have turned up evidence of what researchers call secondary burial, a practice where a body was first left to decompose, and then the bones were collected, often painted with red ochre and stored or reburied in a communal location. The red ochre matters. It is the color of blood, of life. Painting bones red was a way of symbolically keeping the dead alive, of refusing the boundary between the living and the gone. In parts of ancient Southeast Asia and the Pacific, a similar practice called endocannibalism existed, where the remains of a loved one were consumed by those left behind. Not out of hunger, out of love. The logic was that the person you loved should remain inside the people who loved them, that they should not become the earth, that they should become you. You recoil from that, but pause. Consider what you do today. You scatter ashes in a place the person loved. You keep a lock of hair. You wear their jewelry. You hang their photograph. The form has changed. The impulse is identical. Anthropologist Thomas Lynch, studying burial sites across the Americas dating back over 10,000 years, found consistent patterns. The body was oriented in a specific direction, grave goods were placed nearby, and red or yellow pigment was almost always present. The consistency across cultures and continents that had no contact with each other tells you something important. These were not learned behaviors passed from tribe to tribe. These were behaviors that emerged independently, again and again, because something in the human mind demanded them. Death ritual is not cultural, it is biological. It is something your brain generates on its own when confronted with loss. But why the objects? Why the deer antlers, the red ochre, the pottery, the beads placed in graves around the world? Archaeologist Joe Zilhau, who has studied Neanderthal burial sites extensively, proposed that grave goods reflect a belief in an afterlife, or at least in a continuation of identity beyond death. If you put a spear in a grave, you believe the dead person will need it. If you put food in a grave, you believe they will be hungry. You are not disposing of a body. You are preparing a traveler. And here is the twist that changes everything. The Neanderthals did it too. For decades, scientists debated whether Neanderthals truly buried their dead with intention. The site at Shanidar Cave in Iraq, excavated by Ralph Solke in the 1950s, produced a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by pollen from multiple flowering plants, hyacinths, groundsels, and grape hyacinths. Solke's interpretation was that someone had laid flowers on the grave. The image of a Neanderthal laying flowers sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Subsequent researchers debated whether the pollen was deposited by wind or burrowing rodents. But more recent analysis of the site, including a study published in 2023, found additional Neanderthal remains at Shanidar in a position that strongly suggests deliberate, repeated placement. Something was happening in that cave. Something intentional. Neanderthals, a species with a different lineage than yours. A species that went extinct, still standing over their dead and feeling the pull to do something. The pull you feel is that old. Now bring it home. Think about the last funeral you attended. The flowers on the altar, that is the Shanidar Cave. The jewelry your grandmother was buried wearing, that is the grave goods at Kafse. The way you drove to the cemetery, even though you know the person is not really there. That is the bone collection, the ochre, the belief that place matters when it comes to the people you have lost. You are not following a modern tradition. You are following a 300,000-year-old neurological instruction that was written into your lineage long before anyone kept records. What changed was not the impulse. What changed was the story you built around it. Your ancestors did not have the word grief. They probably did not have a theology of the afterlife, at least not the kind you might recognize. But they had what you have. A brain that assigns meaning, a social network that frayed when someone was removed from it, and a deep, wordless refusal to treat the people they loved as just another object in the world. That refusal is what makes you human. Not your tools, not your language, not your cities. The moment your ancestors stood over a body and felt that it was not enough to just walk away, that something had to be done, that this person deserved a mark, a gesture, a place, that was the moment humanity truly began. Not with a discovery, not with an invention. With a burial. And tonight, when you think about someone you have lost, when you feel that strange pull to go somewhere they loved, or look at a photograph, or say their name out loud even though no one is listening, you are not being sentimental. You are being exactly what 300,000 years of human history made you. You are doing what ancient humans actually did.